Welcome to Conscious Conversations, a place where East meets West, a place where conversations and ideas will challenge your minds, expand your consciousness, awaken your heart, and make you think more deeply about yourself and the world.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Conscious Conversations. I'm your host, Anthony Profeta, and I'm here with co-host and good friend, Wes Gordon. How are you doing today, Wes?
Doing very well. Very happy today.
Good. I'm very happy to hear that.
You like that?
Well, since the last couple of episodes, especially, starting in Halloween and stuff, we're a little bit on the darker side with the history of the devil and the history of hell. We thought we'd brighten up today's conversation a little bit and talk about happiness. And really, what is it, and is it attainable to have lasting happiness, and are there secrets to happiness, and all of these sort of things. And this has been a question and a conversation that's really been happening from the beginning of time. One of the Greek philosophers, Aristotle, said that happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, and the whole aim and end of human existence. That is what we're supposed to be doing, is trying to find and seek out happiness. That's truly the purpose. However, all humanity seems to be searching for happiness in some sort of way, shape, or form. But while everyone's searching for it, from many perspectives, they would say they're searching in the wrong way for it, because it's not really a thing per se that can be actually found. We go searching thinking that happiness is in the things of people, in the places, in possessions or things that we're search out and acquire, and that it can somehow be found in like this material world. And while there might be an underlying essence that certain things can sort of make us feel happy, the truth is that happiness really isn't a thing. It's more a state of being, many would say, a state of mind. And it's really a inside job. What is your take on this idea of happiness?
Absolutely, it's an inside job. It's a matter of perspective.
Right.
Like what makes one person happy may not necessarily make the other person happy.
That is very true.
Yeah. And I started delving into this. There's a lot of definitions or explanations for what makes people happy.
Okay.
The Tony Robbins guru, he says you got to have 6 human needs.
Really?
Certainty, uncertainty and variety.
Okay.
Connection and love, growth, and contribution.
And some interesting points.
Yeah, he goes deep into those, and in the work that he does. But yeah, if you can meet those 6 areas, you usually are generally in a form of happiness.
Okay, and those are some very interesting things to talk about, especially like certainty and uncertainty. Did you say certainty and uncertainty?
Yeah. Yeah, because everything stays static and doesn't change, you get bored.
Yes.
It's redundant.
Yes.
And the zest for life kind of goes, ugh.
And the thing is, too, that change is really only the truth about life.
Right.
If everything is constantly changing. I was once asked by Arianna Huffington to write a post on my journey from medical school to mindfulness teacher for her online site, Thrive Global. And I titled it My Search for Happiness, because what I sort of found in my own sort of journey in this world and in this life is that there was a period of time in my, up until, I guess you could say, almost the end of my 20s, where I was like everybody else, searching for happiness in everything outside of myself. I was brainwashed by, society in the way that if I got the white picket fence with the house in the yard, which I was on that path, I was going to become a doctor, which society said is ideally a phenomenal job. You're going to be happy with that. And I got a townhouse in the suburbs of New Jersey. So I just got home at that time. I also bought a Cadillac. I was buying Armani suits so that when I went into work, I had like the finest, suits on and all of this sort of stuff. And I was amassing all of these wonderful possessions that society and advertisers and everybody is saying will make you happy.
Right.
However, what I began to see because I've always been sort of introspective, I've always been contemplative. And I noticed that as I was acquiring all these things, my happiness really wasn't increasing to the extent that I thought maybe it should have been in compared to what I was getting. And also I noticed that there was still some sort of void inside. Like, why wasn't the happiness lasting? And so I began to question myself. And I really found and discovered that happiness is not inherent in anything in the external world. It's not in possessions, not in people, it's not in things. Because, and the way I described it in the article that I wrote for Thrive Global was that many of you out there, all my dear friends, the listeners, watchers, and those close to me know that I'm a chocoholic. Like, chocolate is my thing. I'll be attached to that. That's one attachment in this life I don't really want to get over. But when in the article I wrote, I said, if happiness is really found in chocolate, if it's inherent in chocolate, then the more chocolate I would eat, the happier I would get, if that's where happiness was. But what we truly see in the outside world is that the more we acquire of something, in the long run, it actually leads to unhappiness, to misery and suffering. So the more chocolate I eat, by default, I'm either going to get sick of eating it, which hasn't happened yet. But the other thing that happens is due to the sugar and everything else, you're going to get probably some health issues, maybe stomach ache, maybe even obesity, some other sort of things. Right. It might make you physically sick, if you eat too much. And then also it's going to bring you the unhappiness of probably having to visit a dentist a bunch of times for cavities and everything else. So in the long run, there isn't happiness found inherently in the chocolate. So it's an actual inner experience that we're getting from this thing that we're acquiring. And that's why we're like these hamsters in a wheel that we think, oh, I got to get this, got to get that, got to get this, got to get that. And then once we get it, we realize, oh, the happiness wasn't there. And now we're off chasing something else.
Exactly.
And so that's why it needs to come from within us. And it can't actually be supplied by anything outside of ourselves.
Exactly. And I believe we have a happiness channel on the inside that's playing all the time.
Right.
But through the way we're raised and the programming that we received growing up and the world conditions right now is like drowned it out, that signal, and we can't hear it anymore.
Right.
I think back in the day when life was a little bit slower, it was easier to hear that channel.
Yeah, less going on.
Yeah, but today we're in such a survival mode and everybody's in such fear and panic. They're just doing good to get through the day,
right,
to make it the best they think they know how to make it.
Right.
And they no longer can tune in and hear that abundant source that never dies, eternal, and it refreshes continually.
Yeah.
And you and I know that when you tap into that, you change and you're like, whoa, this stuff out here isn't as enticing as it used to be. You learn how to put it in perspective.
Yeah, and that's true. And something you were sharing with me prior to the show was that, you're saying that in today's world, so many of us have been in stress and these other sort of what we would often call a negative state for so long. We've been so stressed out for so long that it's become comfortable. Like that seems to be our norm right now. Yeah. And when we step out of that, it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And, that's a disheartening thing, because the truth is that inside, from many spiritual traditions, they would say that our soul actually knows the happiness that it once had when it was united to the source and not feeling this idea that it has now separated in some way, even though it's not separate, but this veiled existence of not knowing that we are ultimately connected to it. And so that's why we're out there searching all the time. We're looking for that, because inside in our soul, that's why we have sometimes this void that can't be filled, right, is that there's this longing, this thirst for that happiness that we once had. And so we're on this quest to sort of find it again. But I think we need to pause here for a quick break. And when we come back, we'll continue talking about happiness and touch on some things and some ideas that can actually help us to cultivate this quality. So stay with us, and we'll be back right after these messages. Welcome back to Conscious Conversations. I'm Anthony Profeta here with Wes Gordon, and we're talking about happiness and secret to happiness and how we look for it in the outside world. But sometimes, we find that what the things that we think are going to make us happy, actually, once we get them, we're off chasing something else.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the Anthony Robbins sort of conditions for happiness.
Right.
Any other conditions for happiness that you are aware of, or
what it shows from the research is it's a mindset,
right?
And you need a set of disciplines to be able to
words.
to be able to enact this energy or this mindset, because what makes me happy may not make you happy. But
right.
The 4 agreements came into my radar because that's one of the disciplines that if you can grab onto those 4 agreements and actually integrate them into your life, you will naturally have a higher level of happiness.
Right.
Because the way that they give you mastery over certain things that affect you.
And for those that don't know the 4 agreements, do you want to share who that author is, Ruiz Miguel,
yes.
and his book, and
the 4
where that comes from?
Right. And the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personal, don't
right.
make assumptions, and always do your best.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. And being impeccable with your word is actually think with integrity.
Yeah.
Only say what you really mean.
Right.
Speak from your heart.
Words are powerful things.
Yes.
And, they have the ability to uplift somebody as much as they do to crush somebody just by the things we say. And the more uplifting we are for others, that actually, by default, gives us some feeling of happiness also, because we're making the other happy. But in terms of Eastern tradition, the Dalai Lama said that happiness comes from our attitude and not really dependent on external conditions, which I think falls in line with what you were saying,
yes.
sort of like a perspective. And, the truth is that we're looking for, really like lasting, eternal, undying, unending happiness in the outside world. But logic says that it can't be found there, because everything in the external world, all these things, these people, possessions, and anything else that's out there in the material world is by default impermanent.
Yep.
So how can anything eternal and unlasting, eternal, lasting, and undying be found in anything that's impermanent? It can't be, because the people that we bring into our life, some of them will leave us. Some of us will definitely leave us when we go through the process or transition of death. Some people will get sick, so we're not going to be happy all the time about these things. But even things, we get a car, and then after, a year or a couple of years or whatever, we don't like the car anymore, and we wish we got a different model. Now, actually, there was a study by Harvard that showed that as soon as you buy something where you have a choice, you automatically begin disliking it. Because by default, the mind always thinks, well, what if I bought the other one?
Something better. Yeah.
So if there's a choice involved, the mind, as soon as you make the choice, eventually thinks, well, what if the other one was better? So happiness begins to decrease almost immediately. But what I'm saying is that even material things, they're destined to fall apart, rust, break down, and be taken away from us. So there can be no lasting, eternal happiness found in anything outside of us, because it is impermanent. So logic just alone shows you that it can't be found there. So that's why we need to turn within ourselves.
Yes.
And that's why I believe that for happiness, meditation and mindfulness practice is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yes.
Because what it does is it helps to, you use the word discipline, and it helps to sort of discipline, train our minds, change make our perspective clearer on the way things are. What you begin to see through these practices is that everything is changing. The world around you is changing. You are changing almost every second. Like your thoughts are changing, your emotions are changing, your feelings are changing, and everything's going up and down. And there's good times and there's bad times. There's like peaks and there's like valleys. And in life, it's always that up and down sort of movement. It's never at the top of the mountain all the time. It's never down in the valley all the time.
Right.
That's the flow of life, is like that wave. And what mindfulness allows you to do, and being present and meditation allows you to do, is it allows you to ride that wave of life in a way that you're not tossed around. You're actually enjoying the ride. You're noticing the ride. And then when the very good times, the happy, the pleasurable times do come, and you're in that peak moment, most people at that stage, if their mind isn't trained or disciplined, begin to shift away from the moment and say, oh, I really love how this is feeling. I'm so happy right now. How can I make this last? And as soon as they've done that,
right,
they've shifted away from it. And
Yep.
they're not really truly connected and present to how happy they really are and how enjoyable that moment really is. They've disconnected. So their happiness isn't as pure and true as it could be if your mind was totally present and connected to the moment. And then on the flip side, when things sort of go downhill and we get down to the valley, most of us are like, well, I don't like this. I don't want this. I don't want this to be like this. I want to be happy again.
Right.
And what we do is we're actually feeding the exact energy that we don't want.
Yep.
And so that actually makes it worse and creates more unhappiness for us. When what meditation and mindfulness does is, okay, things change. Right now, something has changed, but you know what happens? We begin to see it clearly and say, well, this too shall pass.
Yep.
Because we can't stay down here forever too. And it allows us to get through those difficult or unhappy or unpleasant moments with a little bit more balanced mind, which in meditation traditions they call an equanimous mind. And so,
Fancy.
Fancy word,
Yes.
there, right? And so the practice allows us to cultivate a state of happiness that seems to be much more balanced in life and sees things in a much more trained way. In Eastern traditions, they believe that an untrained mind is our worst enemy, but our trained mind or a disciplined mind actually becomes our best friend. And so that's why a disciplined mind can become our best friend when we're seeking for happiness, because it begins to see things in a much more clearer light.
Yes. Yeah, meditation is a very powerful discipline and tool for that. It helps you to become the watcher as life comes at you. I call it a spiritual bullfighter.
Okay. I
So
like that.
When you want to embrace something, it comes head on at you. You can embrace it if you want to.
Right.
But being a spiritual bullfighter, you know how to step out of the way for the things that don't serve you as well. And you're still at that state where you're okay because you're still, in control. You're not reacting. You're
Right.
becoming responsive with how your attitude and your emotions are displayed.
I really like that analogy. I'll have to get you a little cape now that you can carry around, but that is one I will use.
Yeah.
A president, actually Abraham Lincoln, he actually once said that folks are only as happy as they make up their minds to be.
Ooh, yes.
And that's another point. But some people sort of struggle with this. They fight with that. They say, but no, external conditions do have an effect on our happiness. Well, I believe that's true to a degree.
Yes.
But there are many people that have found happiness while being in prison, and the very an experience that many people would take to be horrible and horrific. For them, they got through it. They found something within themselves that was able to take the experience of not being, what many would perceive a happy, wonderful experience, and turning it into a positive thing because they connected to something inside. So you can be happy and be in sort of miserable outside chaos and experience and move through that experience in a happy state because you've made up in your mind, you've made a choice, or you found that happiness within.
I came out of a meditation. I'll go deep on you here. I came out of a meditation and it was shown to me that I am responsible, or I am the one that chooses how I feel about anything that happens to me in my life, not at the outside stuff. No longer a victim. It was very empowering.
Yes.
Like, wow, that's amazing. But then the flip side of it was, oh my God, if I feel certain ways, then I'm doing that to myself. How does that work? So, more meditation and going deeper. But yeah, that's true.
Yes.
But most people don't want to hear that.
No, at all. There's another philosopher, John Locke, who said that people always forget that happiness is a disposition of the mind. And some ways or some ways that we can sort of find happiness or be happiness, or maybe what we can say some of the secrets of happiness, some that I found as I was sort of researching this more, was that they said it's important to differentiate between our needs and our wants. Yes. Which becomes an important thing because we can always sort of want something. And if we're always wanting something, then we're never really truly happy because we're not content with what we have. We're always sort of seeking for more. And if you're not happy with what you got, why do you think more is going to make you happy? It also said, as I said, this comes from Eastern traditions, training your mind, disciplining your mind, and being responsible for your words, thoughts, and actions, sort of like what you were touching on in the words with the 4 agreements.
Yes.
And then it said to look within daily, look within yourself, and really choose when you wake up to be happy in your heart. Because every day we can find something to at least be happy about.
Right.
Try to. Just like the whole idea of try to find something to be grateful for. Well, gratitude also increases our happiness. So if you can find something when you wake up, get out of your bed to say, hey, I'm really happy about this. Or before you go to sleep at night, say, I'm really happy this happened today. Then it does begin to increase our level of happiness. Yeah. And the other thing, the last thing that I found on the list was to not be possessed by your possessions.
Attachment.
Yeah, attachment there.
Well, Christ summed it up as, don't lay your treasures up where moth and dust corrupt.
Yes.
And that was just a quick brief of how he presented it.
Yeah. And store up your treasures in heaven.
Yes.
So don't be focused on the things here. Be more focused on what's to come. And the things, that we can store up, those things are, things like love, happiness, gratitude, all the things that do have an eternal quality to them and that we are seeking in this world.
And you get to use that stuff too. It's just not being attached to it, understanding its place, because it's very valuable to make your life work.
Yeah. And the other thing about the disciplining of the mind is why it's so important is because when we wake up each day, if the mind isn't trained, it basically takes us wherever it wants to go. If it wants to go think about thoughts of anger, or if it wants to go think about thoughts of regret or sadness or whatever, it just goes there and then it pulls us with it into those negative states. Yep. So that's why training the mind in a way to say, hey, we're going to go here right now. And that's what meditation and mindfulness does. It trains the mind to be what is called single-pointed. You learn to put your mind where you want it, when you want it there, for as long as you want it there. And that's really a powerful ability when you can actually come to do that. It's actually like a superhero power.
Exactly. It is.
So that presence is that important. But we're actually running out of time now. But I really just do want to share 2 little quotes by 2 musicians. One is by Bob Marley, who said, free yourself from mental slavery, and only you can do that.
Right.
Because, we're all basically slaves to our mind. But the other is John Lennon, who told a story once. He said that when he was about 5 years old, his mother told him that happiness was the key to life. When he went to his school, they asked to do a report, what do they want to be when they grow up? He wrote happy. And the teacher said, you don't understand the assignment. He said to the teacher, no, you don't understand life.
Good one. Very good one.
And so we thank you all for being here today, listening, watching. We hope that you are truly very happy and blessed wherever you are right now. And just know that it is a choice. We thank you for choosing to watching us, listening to our conversations. We hope you join in on the Facebook group and share what makes you happy, where you think it's found, and add to this conversation online. You can find us also on iTunes as a podcast and Spotify, and on 101.7 every Tuesday at 3:30. Thank you and have a blessed day.